6 p.m. and I'll call this session of council to order. We'll begin the evening off, or before we actually begin the evening off, in case of a fire, we have 2 emergency exits here on the right and the left of everybody. Make your way out to the left out here in the parking lot to the muster station. Just be safe, courteous to everybody, and leave no man, woman, or child behind. All right, approval of the agenda, including, oh yeah, sorry, we actually are Facebook live streaming tonight for the first time for joint council. So we hope everybody at home tunes in. There's a lot of people here tonight interested in our presentation, and no comments will be responded to, as our record keeper tonight is going to be busy recording what we're saying, I guess. So please contact your councillors on the town side or on the municipal side afterwards if you have any questions, and we'll be glad to answer them. All right, approve the agenda, including additions or deletions. Are there any additions tonight? Councillor Leopold.
Yes, through you, Chair. I would like to add to the agenda Bill 55, special legislation regarding the Region of Windsor and West Hants Municipality Act.
Bill 55, we'll put under 8C just for simplicity.
And additionally, if I could add legislative process.
8D, legislative process. Deputy Mayor Murley.
No, I'm good, thank you.
You're okay? Anything else from council? I'm not going to add it as an addition, but at the end of the meeting, I'd like to, there's a lot of people here tonight who may have some questions or comments. Maybe end of the meeting the best, or yeah,
after the presentation.
Or we'll do it after the presentation, because I'm pretty sure if the guys doing the presentation, they're okay with that. Okay with questions afterwards? The rest of the councils are okay with that? All right, perfect. Any deletions for tonight? I'll look for the motion to approve. Moved by Deputy Warden Morton, seconded by Councillor Keith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Approval of joint council minutes from the 26th of July, 2018.
So moved. Noting any errors or omissions.
Moved by Councillor Zwicker, seconded by Deputy Mayor Murley. Councillor Leopold.
Yes, I would just like to point out a couple of items that I noticed in joint council minutes.
Okay.
Specifically at the bottom of page 2. The mayor is quoted stating, discussions took place surrounding what the transition committee would look like, noting that citizens would be part of it. So now we know that there are no citizens on the transition committee, just warden, deputy mayor, and the coordinator. So looking for clarification on that.
On the comments you mean, or?
Yeah, whether they need to be edited or amended, that is.
We'll have to amend those, because that can.
No. At the time, sorry, Warren, if I may.
Yep.
At the time, there had been preliminary discussions before the province was involved that perhaps members of the community could sit on that. That didn't come to be, but this actually did have a discussion about that. That's all. Doesn't need to be deleted or anything. It just was at the time.
At the times, sorry, through you, Chair, that was what you were aware of?
No, that's the discussion we had preliminary, like the warden and I and the CAOs and so on.
That citizens could or would be
We
part
thought they might be part of the process. Obviously, they're not part of the committee.
It was a discussion, but it was never agreed upon, or it was never part of the actual transition committee. I think it was very clearly stated that it was just the four members of councils and the transition coordinator.
Sure, thank you for that clarification. Secondly, the bottom of page 3, it states that Nancy Bray, municipal advisor, clarified that the UARB application would remain with the UARB, but would have to be suspended with the special legislation. Just because wording is sometimes used synonymously, I'm just looking for clarification on that. And given that there was a council meeting at Town of Windsor, just,
We made a motion and passed it.
Yeah, they've made Town of Windsor has made a motion last night to withdraw that application
okay.
altogether.
So sorry, through you, Chair, just wondering, is there also a process to suspend it, or are they one and the same, or
We withdrew it.
Yeah, it's withdrawn. It's no longer there.
in withdrawn as in it doesn't come back?
Doesn't come back. It doesn't exist anymore.
From us. I don't know what the ARCs did.
Okay, no, thank you. And then lastly, page 5, paragraph 2. Councillor Leopold agreed that an ill-advised plebiscite would not be a good idea, noting the commitment of communication and engagement that will be surrounding process in the area. Where that is my comment, I would argue that it should have read, Councillor Leopold agreed that an ill-advised plebiscite would not be a good idea, but if the public is kept informed throughout the entire process, then the public would be making an informed vote. So there was some summarizing, with respect to our minute taker, through you, Warden. But
So
that was,
we'll amend that then to read what
yes.
what you meant.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Councillor Daniels.
Quick question. The minutes are recorded verbatim, correctly?
They are on recorded cassette. Yeah.
On both ones?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. All good. So moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Business arising from minutes and related correspondence. Update on crossing emergency access. Either CAO want to take that, Martin?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So, as you recall, there was a discussion with regard to secondary access and emergency access at the crossing. We are working with the developer for an agreeable solution with the town and developer and the municipality, and I hope we'll be able to resolve that in the near future. So we are working on it, and we are aware of the concerns, and we are identifying solutions to move it forward.
Perfect. Any questions from either council on that to either CAO? Seeing there is none, moving on to presentations. I'm on River Abito. Tonight we have from DTIR, Deputy Minister Paul LaFleche, Kevin Beckers from Agriculture, Alexander Wilson from CBCL, and Peter Hackett, Chief Engineer. Who'd like to start off?
I'll just mention we have some other staff in the back of the room there on the highway side, engineers and planners and environmental engineer who, if there are any questions about the highway part of it, can come up. So we'd like to start by giving a little overview of the highway construction job, even though that's not why we're technically here. We're here for the Abito. The highway job actually gives us an ability to renew the Abito, and Mr. Beckers will explain that later, or we cannot bother with the Abito. Either one is possible, but we thought as long as there was an opportunity to do the Abito, it's a separate project from the highway. It's a separate federal initiative too. The highway doesn't require the Abito, but it's a convenience in that it allows us to renew the Abito. So Mr. Beckers will go through that, but I'll first ask Peter Hackett to talk about what we're doing with the highway here, because tomorrow afternoon you will see 2 federal ministers here touring the highway along with Minister Porter, and lots of federal dignitaries types looking at this job, because they're looking at this highway twinning as a great example of what the federal government is doing across Canada in terms of infrastructure spending.
Perfect. Peter Hackett.
You can hear me there. I'll be pretty quick. So as most people here know, the residents know that Highway 101 was twinned over the last number of years, probably the last 20 some years, from Sackville to Windsor, and then we skipped the Windsor area mainly because of the causeway, and then continue on the side of Falmouth up to Avonport down to exit 10. So we were given the opportunity now to continue on that twinning through federal government funding, as well as provincial government funding announced last year. And it's about, to finish off the twinning through the Windsor area, it's about 9 kilometers to do the entire stretch. As you know, you might see that the first section is out to tender now, and extra construction is going to be construction of the first tender between exit 5 and 5A. So the intention is to continue on with that piece of highway, and then start on the next piece on the other side of Falmouth and work on that section, and leave the causeway section for the last part of this process. The design for the causeway, across the causeway, the road design is pretty much solidified. It brings it up to tax standards, Transportation Association of Canada standards to this day. The current causeway is below standard. That's why you have a 90-kilometer-hour speed limit through there. So the new alignment looks pretty fixed to where we want to put it, and we're still going through the process of the funding part of that for right now. So to get these first 2 pieces done, and then get the causeway part done is sort of our initiative going forward. And we're working with agriculture on the Abateau part. That's why we're here tonight to talk about that. And when we're all finished, we're hoping to have a speed limit here that's equal to the rest of the 100 series highways through the province, twin highways through the province. And this will be the final part of the gap that we're missing right now. So we're very encouraged by the work that we're doing, and we're very grateful to the province and the federal government for the funding they give us to get this project done to make the highway safer. So that's really the summary of what we're doing and the timelines. We hope to have it all completed, I believe, by 2022, and have it all open at that time. So we started now, and we're progressing forward. And as part of it is, as Deputy Minister LaFleche said, we're going through the process with agriculture, the consultations with the public and the community groups on going across the causeway and what that's going to look like going forward, and the impact to both the environment and the town. So that's where we stand right now, Paul.
Okay, so Mr. Beckers is a director of the Abateau system around the Bay of Fundy for the Department of Agriculture, not the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. Separate department. They maintain the dike system around the Bay of Fundy, and he is in charge through those responsibilities of the Causeway Abateau, which is separate from the Highway Department. So I wanted to let him go through a little history of the Abateau, what you have now, and what you could have or not have in the future.
Perfect.
Thank you, Paul. Peter, acknowledge Warden Sabian and Worship Mayor Allen, councillors, Martin and Louis and staff and public that have come out here this evening to hear the presentation and hopefully put some clarity around the project, and this may displace some of the myths that are being created. The current background: the existing Abateau and highway are an integral portion of the dike system that surrounds the Windsor community. It protects Windsor and Falmouth and 1,600 hectares of land, or 4,000 acres of agricultural farmlands, from flooding. That was the primary initiative, along with the highway itself, when this was established back in the late 60s and became functional in 1970. The system is currently vulnerable to storm surges and requires upgrades to adapt to climate change and sea level rise. You only have to drive by the structure to see that the building and part of the structure is actually lower than the current highway itself, to be able to reflect on that. The projections for the new construction of the highway are 2 meters higher than the current causeway itself, so a 6-foot elevation, and it's easy to put that into perspective. The existing Abateau was not designed to accommodate fish passage and has very limited flexibility. It's 50 years old, and it's very hard to tweak an old, aging piece of infrastructure. Efforts have been made over the past to accommodate this structure to provide fish passage, with certain limitations and within the ability of the structure itself. The current Abateau structure is at end of life. It has received inspections by engineers. They have deemed this end of life. We've partnered with Transportation, Agriculture, CBCL, and we've reviewed the structure, and we've come to this determination. To replace this structure will take 3 to 4 years to do that. So we're in an opportunity where this is something that we should be considering. The current concerns: the structure cannot be dewatered. If there is an issue inside the culverts themselves or with the spillway out front, it's very hard to divert the water to do work on that. any of that type of work would cause flooding concerns for the town because you're shutting off part of the structure to do that. This creates safety concerns for inspections as well. We're not able to dewater the site to be able to properly go in there and do that, and safety concerns if we have to work on the structure for the community itself. There is no backup. There's 2 guillotine gates there. If there's a malfunction with those gates, we have a potential problem for flooding for the community. As I mentioned, there's decreased flow capacity during structure maintenance. We replaced the sills on the structure here, or attempted to, in 2012, and were unsuccessful. And it was primarily due to the inability to dewater the structure to get in there and work on it successfully. Deferring the project for the future would mean significant challenges for future construction over the next 10 to 20 years. Essentially, how are we going to reroute the river by the new 6 lanes of highways that we put out in front of that to construct a new structure? This structure was built in the dry, the river was channeled in through it, and it creates enormous challenges to do. It's a very complex project, and it poses many challenges. The upgrading costs are expected in the range of $25 million alone for the Abbotsford structure, plus the bridges. So to put that into concept, we need to lift the motors, come up with new motors for the system of the current Abbotsford structure. We have to build new gates, a new building to control it. As I mentioned, the elevation is 6 feet. It's more than 6 feet below what the climate change predictions are. It's exposed to the sea, storm surges, and everything that Mother Nature can throw at the structure. So if we build 2 bridges out in front of that structure without putting the new Abbotsford in front, those bridges would be water spans. They'll be exposed to Mother Nature and the tidal environment and the seawater that Mother Nature can throw at those. So there's additional costs with the bridges themselves. We had a fish bypass channel that was designed back in 2010. The estimate at that time was $10 million. The general rule of thumb is you double your money every 7 years. You're looking at a $20 million expansion or upgrade for that Abbotsford to provide fish passage where it is. That was a very high-level engineering assessment. Not a lot of details went into that, and it was only on one side of the structure. It has significant limitations. So to upgrade the building and the gate system and all of that, it's been said that we can't do that engineering physically. Yes, we can, but we'll be investing into an older structure, a minimum of $25 million, plus the upgrade to the bridges and the width of the bridges that would have to be created. There is a realistic threat that the gate could fail. It could be as simple as there is a gate opening required during a spring melt and the power fails and the generator is not hooked up fast enough to meet the tide requirement. The differential, the tide and the lake have to be equal to open the gates. Otherwise, the water pressure is too high and we'll miss the tide opening. That could potentially cause a flood for the community. I'm not trying to use scare tactics. It's a realistic threat that if we have a gate malfunction, it could cause flooding for the community. This is why it's classified as a flood control structure and part of the safety components of a dam structure. So this is with the malfunction of the gate. The gate's in the open position. The tide goes out. The lake empties. When the tide returns, your community is flooded. And essentially, it demonstrates why the structure was put in the first place with the causeway itself. It shows the current boat club, Pacific Boat Club, underwater. Much of the 4,000 acres of farmland that are upstream and the waterfront of Windsor community itself underwater. So it demonstrates the significance of the current structure and why it's important and why it has to work every day, 365 days a year. And that's the function or the priority that we provide you as the Department of Agriculture. Project objectives. Public safety was the main thrust of this project. To maintain a corridor over the Avon River and continuity of a rail trail and utility services, continued protection of the community's agricultural land from efforts of flooding and sea level rise and climate change. That's our #1 goal for this project. Other components of the project, regulatory requirements, improved fish passage as part of the environmental assessment that was noted from Department of Environment based on many of the submissions from the public and those that contributed to that, and the Fisheries Act requires improved fish passage. The objective is to minimize these environmental impacts. The impact of the salt marsh that's out front, it's called a Ramsar salt marsh. It's of world significance and needs to be protected. Consideration of potential negative impacts, asserted or established Mi'kmaq Aboriginal or treaty rights is another significant component of the project. Minimizing the social and economic impacts. I've talked to business owners in this community. I've sat down with Tim and Heather and Steve Hartog. I've talked to the CAOs. We've done presentations at the Community Liaison Committee. I've sat at picnic tables with farmers, Oltons, Bremner, Mannings, Davisons. I think they're here this evening. I saw them coming in. Many other people that make their livelihoods here in this community, and that is not unnoticed. And it's a very important part of this project, and we certainly have to have a project that is a win-win for everybody, because they're listening loud and clear of what's being said, and I'll try to describe the process of where we are on that project. So we also sat down with the Physical Boat Club, listened firsthand of how they run their operation and the importance of that in the community and the investments that they put in it. I've heard the mayor on CTV News. We're certainly paying attention and listening and watching what's taking place. The part of the process here is we were in the preliminary design options. We presented those out at the CLC meeting the other night. Alex is going to touch on those here this evening. We're now in the consultation stage. We're out presenting, listening, and hearing what this community is about and what you would like to see in this project and how we can create a balance so that it's a win-win for everybody. Preliminary design options have been developed, as I said, and we're seeking your feedback. We're here to listen. No decisions have been made. This is an important project. It's very complex, and it's probably the biggest one Windsor's going to face in a long time. Key issues and concerns are being considered for further refinement. Alex will talk more about that, and alternate options exist so that we can make this project work for everyone. And I'll turn it over to Alex to dive into some of those options.
Thank you, Kevin. Mayor, CAOs, council members of the public. So I will talk a little bit about the more technical aspects and different options that we have been investigating, and where we are right now, and how we have assessed how those options would impact different project goals, including different requirements that we've looked at, as well as impacts on the different aspects of the community. So to start with, we started looking at where would be a good location.
Just not to cut you off, Alex, can you bring the microphone a little bit closer to you? Some people are having a hard time hearing.
There we go. Okay, is that better?
Perfect.
I can speak directly in the microphone. To start with, we started with looking precisely at where we could efficiently build a structure to minimize the impacts on the water system, as well as the sediment and ecosystem. So we have 3 locations there that we identified. Ideally, we want to maintain the current flow paths. So number 1 there is right in the middle of the channel. So ideally, we want to build a structure that doesn't change the existing flow paths. In effect, the less we change the flow paths, the less risk we have of damaging the salt marsh, of creating erosion that can affect the dike protection system, or creating accumulation of sediment that would impact the navigation or anything like that. This is the main issue with the options 2 and 2A. We were wondering if there was maybe an opportunity to build a structure on the side there in the dry. That's a nice looking spot there. But it turns out that complexity, having to build a diversion channel with a new rail bridge, in addition to having new orientation that could damage the salt marsh, made that location 1 the most feasible and least disruptive. So we went with that location. This is a rendering of what that might look like. So same channel, you can see the existing highway. The twin highway would be just downstream of that, and then in front of that we have the abortive structure. So that would be protecting the twin highway, protecting all the structures upstream, and all the Windsor area and farming fields. So in terms of water management, this structure as presented can be operated in a number of ways. So the first way we looked at this project is, well, what can we do to maintain things the way they are? Let's see if it's able to maintain a freshwater reservoir at its current level and see what it can provide for fishway. Because when we look back at what Kevin mentioned about the goals, we had flood protection, and then we had fish passage. That's the other one. Fisheries Act, it's a law. We have to provide improved fish passage. It turns out that in the summertime, there's essentially not enough water draining out of that lake to supply the fishway. The rest of the year, maybe, but as it stands, that gate right now is closed for weeks, sometimes months at a time, because there just isn't enough water. It either goes in the ground or evaporates or seeps through the causeway or leaks around the structure, but there just isn't enough to supply enough water to produce an effective fishway in the summer. So that's one critical limitation to that first option. So we continued looking and said, well, what if now we try to make that fishway effective? What if we pump water into that fishway to make sure there's enough water in it? And we found that essentially it's going to affect the lake level. So that lake is going to draw down sometimes completely in order to have sufficient water in that fishway. And we try to minimize the size of that fishway. Even with a fishway that's so small that it's not really effective, it's still going to drain that lake. So this option is also not very effective. So we looked at scenario C, which is controlled / partial tidal exchange. So we allow a little bit of tide in, only a little bit, to allow some fishways to function, to have enough water in them. Now, because there's salt in there, we limit how high the water can get. Essentially, we don't want to affect the operations of ski martok or farming operations. So it's a limited amount of tide that gets in there. And because it's limited in height, the average water level would go down. So I'll explain a little more what that might look like. And so, as I mentioned, the lake levels would be reduced, and that would be between approximately 0.6 meters or 2 feet to about 2.1 meters or 7 feet below the levels they are at now. It's intentional in order to not affect the farming or ski martok operations. Now, the fact that we are allowing this type of exchange provides a very effective type of fishway. It's been described as 24-hour, 365 days a year fish passage for all 24 species identified in the system. It's also a very adaptive design. It can be adjusted to meet different kinds of needs. So to summarize this option, we would have improved flood protection because it's a very passive standard system. It looks very much like the standard type of abattoir system that exists in 240 other locations. Simple steel door hung on chains. It would be reverted to a more natural type of river. Essentially very high quality fish passage. There would be a fluctuation with the tides. The appearance would change. There would be some sediments that would go in, so the color would change. Competitive canoeing would be significantly impacted. Essentially, we're told competitive canoeing cannot happen if there's movement of water even. Recreational canoeing is another story, but recreational boating, fishing may be improved. There's certainly going to be a lot more fish. There's tremendous potential for development of fish populations in the area. And mudflats being exposed more frequently would be expected to develop into salt marsh. So tremendous ecosystem benefits. So we presented this at the Community Liaison Committee, and we heard that there was some response, sometimes very clear and very clearly. And the main response that was made was that the change in lake water levels, saltwater intrusion, was essentially extreme. So the goal of the presentations that we're making is to obtain feedback from the community, from the different people, and we are hearing those concerns. So we understand there's worries about potential impacts. So we are welcoming the feedback. We are hearing this, and we're, as Kevin mentioned, in the consultation phase of this project. As Ben said again, no decision has been made. This is really important to restate. We're in the consultation phase for preliminary design. Nothing is set in stone. We haven't decided anything yet. It's really, I want to make it very clear. So we're still receiving feedback. And actually, the October 10th is something we're looking forward to, because it will give us a chance to talk one-on-one to any community member and be able to explain in as long a time that anybody would like to, any detail, just to make sure that any concerns are responded to and we can explain very clearly what the situation is, any technical questions, any habitat, any questions at all about any aspect of this project. We'll have the entire design team present to respond to any question. So we are trying to balance all the goals and the community concerns as well. So because we are at this point, up to the beginning of this consultation process, the goal was really to meet the regulatory and public safety goals. This is why we had essentially an engineering option. And now that we're in this consultation phase, we're hearing more of the feedback, and we can now integrate this. So we've started working on a new option we call option D. It's a hybrid of these different things, and it would have the ability to maintain a freshwater lake. It would also have the ability to improve fish passage. It would be an adaptable design. Essentially, would have the different components of what I presented to you into one structure. So we'd be able to do the different things that the regulatory requirements would need, as well as what the community would need at certain times. The quality of the level control is also something we want to mention, because the current structure, as Kevin mentioned, was never designed to control water levels. It doesn't do that very effectively, and it doesn't have any quality fish passage in there. This new structure would be much better to control water levels, so it wouldn't go down at semi-random intervals, and it would be much safer. This new structure we're looking at would be adaptable, flexible, be able to respond to pretty much anything you want to do with it. It would be able to do. So what would it look like? This thing that can do everything. Essentially, it would start by looking very similar to the current structure. So 2 main big square openings. It would have both a tight gate, a flap gate. So what I described before, those iron doors hung on chains. And behind that, there would be vertical lift gates, similar to the existing structure, but that would be a modern technology type of a lift gate that would be controlled by a computer, and not just can be water half open. It would be completely, any increment would be, and it would be constantly adapted. So modern design that had much better control of levels. And on the side, we'd have essentially 2 types of fishways. We'd have the tidal fishway that provides 100% fish passage for all species. And beside that, we have the freshwater type of fishways that would only take the overflows of what would be available after that lake level has been reached. So we'd be able to use one or the other type of fishway depending on what situation we would be wanting to have, depending on the different needs at different times. I think, this is essentially the presentation. So be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'll open the floor up first to councillors. If any councillors have questions. Councillor Monroe?
Since we don't have a copy of this online, we receive this and place it on file so people can get it from our system. I assume we
Do you have a copy of it, or could you guys send us a copy, or? Okay, now.
My question is, back one slide. Can you just explain to me how the cattle fishway remains open at all times? How do you not get the brackish water up into the neighbors? Or how is that controlled if those two slots are open always? Just curious.
So currently on the structure, we operate the gates on an incoming tide. The fish follow the incoming tide, and when that tide equalizes with the lake, we close the gates. So there's opportunities at certain times a year to create that on these two side ones. There's other times when we're maintaining the lake. You can imagine that this time of year, we want to keep the lake at this level for the Dragon Boat races and the pumpkin races that are coming up on the 14th. So it's also an opportunity time for fish passage. So those two side ones, we would have gates that could open at those opportunities when the tide is just about equal with the lake, create that half hour or 1 hour opening, and then shut them. And we'll be operating them on the outside, smaller channels, so there's a less risk if they malfunction. Currently, we're operating that on large gates, very large gates that could cause significant flooding to the community on an old structure that doesn't have the capacity to do that. So that's the hope. Now, we're getting into operational things. This is very preliminary. We're trying to scope this out and make it work. I'm just trying to create a visual that'll explain what our thoughts are and how that may work. But the intent is for no saltwater intrusion. So ski martok, farmers that are looking for irrigation, the mud flats that we were hearing about and different things, the intent is not to allow that in.
Perfect. Good, Kathy?
Yeah. To see if it develops.
Fine.
Just a few questions. The existing causeway structure, it is over 50 years old. What shape is it in? Does it need work in this?
So as I mentioned, the engineering assessment that has been completed on that, it is end of life. If it were to be maintained, as Paul said, these are two separate projects. We would have to upgrade the current structure. The upgrade of that structure would require new gates and new gate frames, and that's physically possible.
Yes, I'm talking about the causeway itself, not necessarily the abattoir area, just the causeway itself.
So the causeway itself, if you visualize it as a dike,
yeah,
its elevation is not adequate for the current climate change predictions or storm surge events that could happen. The current elevation is at 10 meters. The new elevation at a conservative level is 12 meters. And the abattoir is typically put up a little bit higher than that. So if you did have a significant flood event, you wouldn't lose your abattoir.
Okay. Okay.
So I guess the question, that leads to the question is, the existing causeway, Kevin, what happens to it if we built this new structure? Does it stay there? Does it get demolished? Does it get raised? Does it become a trail? There's still a railroad. What happens to that? I think that's
all those elements, right? Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
So the intent is, if you look just below to the right of number 2, that's where your current causeway or the abattoir structure is.
Right.
So we would be peeling back, taking the buildings off and the gates and the head wall that's there, and leaving I assume we'll leave the road there, and we'll definitely be leaving the rail bed and the walking trail, and it'll operate as a culvert.
Oh, okay.
So the structural integrity of the concrete itself is in very good shape, particularly on the upstream side. It's the downstream side that is of concern, where the spillway is and the gates themselves need to be upgraded. The building is lower than the current height of the highway, et cetera, so this is the reasoning behind that. And Alex's team at CBCL have modeled the capacity of that culvert to ensure that will not cause concerns for flooding for the community.
Okay, just two other quick ones. How long does it take to open those gates, the new proposed gates? How quickly do they open?
So the design is not complete yet.
No, I
Very
understand.
fast. It just depends on the technology that's used.
Okay, so
difficult to answer that.
Okay, all right.
okay, but could you give us an idea? Is it a 5-hour procedure? Is it a 1-minute procedure?
We're talking probably less than a minute. And,
Oh, thank you.
There's mechanical gates that are out in front that are on hinges.
Yes.
And during the spring of the year when we have snow melt, we likely raise the larger guillotine gates so that when the tide is out, they would open on themselves. And the modeling has shown that this provides faster flood protection.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So, Kevin, just I want to add an addendum to that. So this new thing, if we were to build it, with, as I understand it, has actually 2 sets of gates,
Yeah.
right? So do you want to explain what is the value of that versus the existing configuration?
So as we mentioned with the existing one, there's no redundancy, there's no backup. So if we have these larger gates hanging out in front on a chain system, which is typical of a lot of the abattoir structures that we have around the province. It gives that added assurance that it will work. And, they close automatically if there's a malfunction with the computer system or power situation or whatever it is. There are scenarios, even though we have an operator 24/7, there are scenarios where we could miss an opening or an opportunity for that gate to close. And these gates give us that assurance from a flood control perspective that we have that added security.
Okay, just and one further one regarding the fishway. I'm not familiar with these different types of fishways and so on like that. And it sounds like I don't know when it's going to be operational and how many fish will actually be able to get through this in any given time. Like, I don't know how great and assuring this is that those fish are going to be getting through.
So once we drill into a final design or direction, those are the tweaking and the details that have to be put to the plan itself. And we have to be able to demonstrate to DFO with confidence that we can achieve that. And right now, is we're trying to narrow in on a design to put the effort in to complete that. If we are unsuccessful in doing that, it's back to the existing structure. And I have confidence that we have the engineering abilities, the best fish pass experts involved in the project. We have input from DFO as well, and the plan seems realistic.
So is this modeled after others, or is this a brand new design?
There's very few fish passages on the Bay of Fundy. We have the highest tides in the world, and if not to sound disrespectful, if it was easy, they would have done it already. So we have nothing we can really model it after, and we've got to look around the world to see what exists. And CBCL has come up with some innovative options already, and we're asking them to tweak that a little bit further because of the messaging we've heard from the community.
Thank you.
But just to expand a little bit on that, there's nothing really new. What these types of fishways are that we're proposing are essentially existing designs. They're adapted to the Bay of Fundy by just being longer, but it's a very standard type of design.
Okay.
Perfect. Councillor Daniels.
Through you, Warden. I just have a couple questions. Has there been, or has DFO done studies in the rivers along the Avon, like the St. Croix River, etc., as well? Just to sort of prove that these 25 different species of fish are actually do exist in there, or is this a cookie cutter, basically, type of piece of legislation?
I think Bob had this more better to answer that question. That they did study in 2003 and identified those. So Bob would ask.
There's done a lot of studies over.
Can you come up? Can you come up, Bob, or take? Yeah.
People hasn't done a lot of studies over the years. They're primarily out there monitoring and seeing that proponents like ourselves are doing the work they're supposed to be doing. Academic research has been done over the years. The 25 species includes everything from very small species up to including sharks. In terms of knowledge of the fish, Condor, is very familiar, being a long-term fisherman in the area. But we've been continuing doing some additional study work, both upstream and downstream of the causeway, as part of our baseline monitoring, and we'll be continuing that in the future, because whatever we build, we're also going to have to monitor it in the future to make sure it's working. If it's not working, we're going to have to readapt and find something that process or management plan that will work. It's part of the law, part of our approval, our authorization for doing so. So one way or another, we have to make sure we have a very flexible design, something that's in there so that we can pre-adapt it if our models don't work, or if we find other species, or if we find less species.
But I think you need a little better answer than that, because your question, Bob gave you the answer sort of, if there are fish. So let's say there aren't fish, but we probably know there are some, but let's say there's not the fish expected. So it could be that the failure of fish to enter the inner lake, like Piscataway, is not due to the design, but due to a lack of fish. So we'll have to look at that issue also. Okay, because is that where you were sort of going?
Yeah, because
Okay.
I haven't been able to find any definitive studies that, state, yes, we've gone up to the St. Croix River or whatnot from any institutions, let's say, that have done significant studies. So that's why I question, is this sort of a cookie cutter type of act, DFO's act?
Well, DFO's act applies to all of the coastal regions of Canada, right?
Yeah,
So I wouldn't call it cookie cutter. It's a national act.
yeah.
But what I don't want people to think here, I've been worried there, Bob, that people could think, if we do this, there's going to be a lake there with incredible amounts of fish, because there just may not be enough species out there and a fish variety to do that. We don't know.
We don't have to worry about
And I
great
think that's
whites.
what Bob's saying, is that we've done studies, they got studies, but don't expect, it's the Sea of Galilee in the time of Jesus, right? When you
Amen.
throw the net in, and then, okay, we don't know. Would that be accurate, Bob? Or do you
I
think
think we're pretty confident. There
the
is
Sea
a
of
lot of
Galilee is
thoughts
coming
coming
around?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I just, through the presentation, I just caught at the very last, being able to adequately supply community needs at certain times, which was a little bit of an alarm for me. So with this, hopefully, new concept that you have, if everything works out the way we want it to work as a community, to satisfy both fish passage and our social and recreational and economical needs, are you still guaranteeing like a 9-foot lake level, like there had been existing?
So if I look at the last 5 years, we've had to implement changes on the current system based on DFO. We have a Physical Lake Committee that we identify what those needs are, and we set lake levels. I'm visualizing that we will maintain those set levels that we've established with that Physical Lake Committee. Those are 9-foot elevations during July, August, September, and October. They drift down to 8 in November, and then I think they bounce up primarily to an 8 or 9 level for Martok so they can make snow. So we got to make sure that we understand what the needs are and where the intakes are for Ski Martok and all of those things. So we're looking at it, and then when you fast forward into the spring and the snow melt, there will be a need to drain down that lake a little more, and it's also a time when fish passage is primarily happening, particularly with the gas growth. So to give a definitive answer, is it going to be 8.5 on this date or 9 feet on that date? I can't answer that tonight, but it's certainly clear to me what the needs are of the Physical Boat Club and what their summer activities are, what Ski Martok is looking for. So it'd be much the same as what we have there today and have enjoyed over the years.
Okay, so basically, bottom line, there's not going to be any negative effect to the canoe club or basically that waterfront that might affect any potential future development or economical impact on the downtown, because that canoe club is very important. That lake's very important to the community, and it's valuable to the community. And I think a lot of these people here this evening came here wanting to express that.
So let me take that, Kevin. I got a flashing
I just
green light.
quick try it again there. Yeah.
Yeah, we had two going conflict. So what we've basically done with this design of Abato that Kevin and CDCL have come up with, we've shifted the issue of lake levels and fish passage from the construction and design to the operation. So that's why Kevin is kind of hedging, okay? So this design allows us to do whatever we would like to do. Okay, so if you would like to keep the lake and you're legally allowed to do it at 9.1285, if we get enough rainfall and all of that, you might be able to keep it there. But on the other hand, if there's someone goes to a judge and says, no, the Constitution or Charter of Rights says there has to be fish passage above lake level, then the judge may order Kevin to lower the lake or open the gates. But it shifts that debate from the construction debate to how it's operated in the future. And Kevin's group operates it. Now, what he's told you is he intends to operate it much like he's, operated in the past. Is that correct, Kevin?
Thanks, Paul. He introduced the complexity very well. So,
Hit your button again.
sorry. He's introduced the complexity very well. What I envision in here happening is that we build a structure that we can maintain as the status quo currently exists. But we also create the awareness and put some monitoring into that and include all of the groups that need to be part of this. So First Nations and our commercial fishermen and others, we have demonstrated that there's significant fish upstream in that lake now. There's lots of evidence from the 2-year study that's been going on. It should be easy to improve upon that, to convince DFO that we have met approved fish passage. We're taking a 50-year-old structure, we're building a new one today, and I certainly hope we have enough knowledge in our engineers that we can demonstrate that we can make that happen. So what that will look like 25 years from now, 50 years from now, there's lots of changes that have happened with the current structure over the last 50 years. I can't predict the future, but we're putting the functionality and the requirements in that so we have not shut any doors. Our goal is to maintain that lake, to respect the importance of fresh water, the irrigation potential, ski martok, the vibrance of the community, all of the things that we have heard. But that's not to say that it could be in the spring and the fall during a peak flow of fish passage that we may have to do things a little bit differently. I can't answer that tonight, and I don't want to make it sound like it's a risk or a fear tactic. It's honesty and transparency that this has been the best kept secret in your community, and probably not many have really been too concerned what's been going on over there in that little green shack, other than when they see the lake down low or they're unhappy with something. So this is an opportunity for us to get more engaged in that and work on it in the future.
I guess my last question is, sorry.
Yep, you're good.
You had, let's see, you had met with the farmers, ski martok, the canoe club. But I guess my question is, why was there not a social or an economic impact study done on potentially what could happen in the future if that lake did not exist? Like was TIR, for example, you had the 4 pillars of sustainability, and you highlighted that in your EA. And I kind of assumed that would have followed over onto the Abateau as well, part of it. But I did hear clear this evening that the Abateau is agriculture and totally separate from TIR. So I'm just questioning why that wouldn't, the 4 pillars of sustainability wouldn't have been part of that Abateau study as well. Just to hear the value that is to the community, that there are more people that rely on that and would like to.
We can certainly do that if you wish, but we weren't planning to substantially change the lake level. I know there's been some stuff out in the media, but it's not been from us. And so I don't think we were planning to have a big change. So therefore we didn't feel we needed to go and do that. Maybe Kevin has a better answer.
So during the investigation of the design options, a lot of homework had to be conducted to understand the modeling and how the system may work. So until that information was presented, it was uncertain whether there would be any significant changes to the lake or the lake operation. So as we witnessed in the CLC presentation and some of the community members had talked about and what we saw here tonight, that options that were presented significantly do impact the lake. So we also heard that that's not an acceptable solution, so we're backing away from that. So it's not that we didn't want to go and do that. We had to see which options and what impacts they created before it was an economic study or an environmental assessment or whatever components that may have to be looked at further.
Good, Jen. Councillor Keith.
Yes, just to get away from the causeway for a minute. The causeway is going to be higher. Is there any plans or what you're looking at with the width of it going out? I know that the tide is much higher now in the St. Croix River. A lot of the banks, like in Somerville down the shore, because over 50 years, if it can't go up, it's got to go out. So is there anything planned for, like where the where the A&W is, they got the dike there, or the dike that protects the lagoon, the Windsor Lagoon, or anything like that, if it's gonna.
Okay, so I'll let Kevin get to that, but actually what we're looking at is more than just the Causeway Dike in terms of what we're gonna do here. But maybe I'll let Kevin pitch. We haven't talked about the other, I'm sorry, I'm in French right now, because I just spent a day with the federal minister. Augmentation, the other improvements.
Right.
Some of us speak French, so don't hesitate.
So it's certainly the goal of the Department of Agriculture to look at the complete system, and we're looking from the Falmouth end right up through to the Trigothnic is what I call that. And there's 3 other abattoir structures that are much smaller in size that we'd like to upgrade and increase the dike height to match the existing, or what the forecasted height of the causeway will be. And we're trying to include that as part of the project. That may not be done by 2022, but it's certainly, as you described, that's an important piece, because I'm well aware that the water can come around through where the A&W is and underneath that bypass, and that's an integral part of the flood scenario for down in the community of Windsor.
Yeah, and all the dikes, like I say about this,
Right on, Dave.
say about the St. Croix River on the way back home to Brooklyn, right? You see it every year, it's going up higher on the dike at all times, right? Rising up and rising up. And just, and with the causeway going higher, just saying, right? Sometimes there will have to be something done.
There is a need to update the provincial dike system for climate change, and that's one of the initiatives that I'm working on, but it's separate from this project, but it's a very valid point.
Good, Dave. Councillor Monroe.
Kevin, I'm still a little confused about the fish passage, so these tides and how this works. It feels to me like we're getting back to something very similar to what we have for the fish. There's going to be a disparity. I guess maybe I could ask, how many hours a day or how many minutes a day do you expect the fish will actually be able to make the passage?
It's hard to get into the details of that tonight. It would be a significant improvement over what we have today. And if you visualize those 2 outside columns, once the tide drops below a certain level, we'll be able to open those up. And we're not opening huge gates, so we can allow the lake to drain out through those passages. And there's times a year when there's more than adequate water within that lake to allow that to happen. So right now, we only open the gates when it reaches a certain elevation and we want to dump water for flood control. We're not opening the gate for fish passage or any of those requirements. So I can visualize that those side channels will allow water to come out significantly more often than we currently have the flexibility to do. So without getting into the details of all that, it's something that will be challenging with the design team to come through, and we're happy to make a presentation at a later date to get into some of those details, but it's pretty important stuff.
Councillor Yanish.
Thank you, Gordon. This is a question about the abattoir. Obviously, option D seems to be very appealing to everyone, and it seems to answer all the questions. But I would add, if it works. And the reason I want to say that is because despite the drawbacks that you explained about the existing design of the old structure was very simple, and it lasted 50 years, and it did the job. And what I'm wondering about option D is, what are the risks associated with that in terms of possible malfunction? It's a more elaborate system. And one question that comes to mind would be the possible impact of silt on that, because you talked about the design of fishways, for example, and well, it's going to be on the Bay of Fundy, so we'll use an acceptable design, but we'll just build it bigger. But that's not accounting for issues like silt. So I'm wondering about, in particular, about the problems that might be encountered with silt, particularly because the marsh is always expanding on the seaward side, and what other areas or components of that new system could be vulnerable.
Thank you for your question. I could go for hours about silt, safety and control systems. So essentially this system is designed to be as simple as possible. So it's It's essentially the same system as existing with vertical lift gates, mechanical systems. The only change is we're thinking about adding computer control, flood forecasting, things like that, to add some safety in there. But the addition of having those tied gates, flat gates just hung there, is actually as well to protect those mechanical gates from silting up. That was one of the issues that were found at the beginning of the operation of the current structure, that a lot more silt than expected was sticking to the gates and making them a lot heavier. So they had to add holes at the top to allow water to flush out that silt, so they wouldn't be as heavy. This system has the flat gates in front of them to prevent that additional water pressure and additional silt from coming on them. So that's an added safety aspect. In terms of fishways, the tidal fishways would essentially always have water flowing through them. So silt only deposits when the water stops moving. So we don't expect any issues there. The freshwater fishways, which would be essentially fish ladders, we expect that they would flush themselves out when there would be sufficient water. But you are correct that at times, especially at times where there wouldn't be enough water in the lake to supply enough water in those fishways, some maintenance will be needed. That's not a question. That's a fact. But it's a simple structure, a concrete structure that can be. That's what Kevin's group does spend most of their time doing, is maintaining those systems. So it is expected to be a simpler, safer system than now. It would have more controls. It would have, Kevin, his cell phone would always have knowledge of where that gate is and how it functions and risks. So always have the ability to, if some computer malfunction happens, which tends to happen, to always, manual override will always be there. So the first priority is public safety, and that's non-negotiable.
Okay, thank you. Just one other question, and I know it's very early days for this new proposal or new option. I'm just curious about costs. How much more, or if at all, extensive
It is early days to put cost on it, but we heard loud and clear what the economic importance was of this community and the need for the control of that structure. So we're going to make every effort to keep the cost as low as possible and stay within the requirements of the project. But right now, that's not our priority. It's to make sure that we provide an option here that we can stand in front of this group or be able to defend to you that it will not negatively impact the community.
All right, thank you.
Group, Councillor Daniels.
Mr. Chair, I just have one more question. Kevin, your presentation the other week at the CLC, you had kind of referred to the causeway as like a dam and the need of upgrades and whatnot. Am I to understand, I believe existing dams all sort of need to be upgraded, and we have one further upstream. Will DFO require fish passage for that as well, by any chance?
So I believe you're talking about the Nova Scotia Power Dam upstream, and they currently have an approval with DFO that expires on a certain date. I think it was 2022, but please don't quote me on that. There is a time where they renegotiate or rediscuss that. So there always is the expectation of the owner of those structures to provide improvements, and they have discussions with DFO. And that is exactly what has happened with our structure over the past number of years, is that we've demonstrated to DFO that we have improved fish passage with the current structure. We have caused fish kills out in front of that structure before with gas grow, and we have to be able to demonstrate to DFO that we're paying attention and doing whatever is possible within our means to make that happen. So I can't comment for what will happen with Nova Scotia Power and DFO discussions, but that's certainly the intent of the legislation and the requirements of the regulatory.
Okay, thank you.
Again, anything else from councillors, or seeing there's none, I'll open up to the public. Darren, you wanted to say something earlier, or?
I was just going to answer a question that she had.
The mic there, and yeah.
I'd like to say something on my own behalf, though. On the answer, Jennifer, to your question.
Just introduce yourself first, please. Yeah.
My name's Darren Porter, and the Brooklyn Fisheries in the area. There was a study done in 2001, 2002, 2003 by Katie University. There's been a lady crash study done in the last 10 years. There's been 4 years of little skate, winter skate studies done in the Ebbw River system. There's been a study on shad in the Ebbw River system. There's been a weir study that had 50-some species in it. When you ask the other places in the system, that's published last year. We had a study on, we had I think 9 years now, acoustic studies on striped bass by different professors at Keene University and DFO, the Ebbw River system. Surgeon, we're in about 7 or 8 years in the Ebbw River system, acoustic studies. There's an endless amount of studies in the system. And it is to see a guy there, by the way. You look at my videos, when I catch a boat, I caught the 12,000 fish in 2.5 hours on his gates, just for people to see the amount of fish outside. What I would like to say is, I've been involved in a lot of meetings, and what I hear tonight, to be honest with you, is I don't know if it's smoke and mirrors or it's disrespect, but I remember sitting at tables where the indigenous groups, 12,000 First Nations, 13 chiefs, said that we want some form of tidal flow if you're not going to open this thing back up, or you're not going to put a bridge in. They want some form of tidal flow. I also remember them saying, not operated by man. And everything I've heard them ask for, I just heard tonight that you're saying the opposite. And I feel that that's quite something to witness. That's change tonight. And what I think people should in this room should, if I was to guess, the system is probably put together in pieces where it can be disassembled and then go right back to what option C was. I'll ask Alex that question. Alex, that'd be my question. Is this smoke and mirrors where we're telling them this room they're running a leak? Has DFO approved this?
Well, we did speak with DFO, and they say that their system, or the mechanism is that they can only look at the designs that are put to them.
So they don't approve, they
check that the law is being met. So that's the one part of DFO's presence. The next part is that there's monitoring required after that.
Exactly. And, so if the monitoring goes, but they don't see what satisfies them, and it's indigenous people say, well, what happened to everything we asked for? You just shoved away. Is this a structure designed so that you can disassemble it and you have the tidal flow again? That's what I think I'm seeing here.
So what this, as I mentioned, when we presented the design for option D, is an assembly of different pieces. It's a structure that's able to do all these different things. So it doesn't close any doors. It's able to maintain the thing freshwater at a fixed level, very well controlled, and it's able to have that partial tidal exchange. We don't know at this point where things will be at in the next years. It depends on the community. It depends on many different groups. The intent is the design doesn't shut any doors.
Anybody else from the audience tonight? Please state your name.
John Leopold, Falmouth. My question is, if we're going to let salt water on this Lake Biscuit side, how do you control the silt so that our lake remains lake instead of a salt marsh?
So the intent of this option D that we put up here is not to allow any saltwater intrusion or sediment. The expectation is to present this solution with fish passage improvements that DFO will accept and provide the opportunities for the project to move forward that the community will accept. So we've also modeled in option C about the impacts of saltwater intrusion, and yes, it caused sediment and may cause some infilling in front of the boat club or the Pacific Canoe Club. and the main channel itself would stay free. And I heard loud and clear from the community that that was not an option that they were willing to entertain at this time. So I don't know if that answers your question, or if you prefer to follow up with more.
That's a short-term answer, but as we've noticed on the outside of the causeway, the salt marsh has grown and grown and grown, which there's nothing wrong with it out there. But if that grows on the inside of the causeway, it's going to cause a lot of flooding in the spring for anybody that has farmland or us golf course people or whatever, and including as far up as where Ski Martop's suction inlets are.
I'll answer this question from a more hydrodynamic perspective, I guess. The shape of the upstream area is in equilibrium. It was shaped by a combination of the tides as well as the freshwater discharge from the Avon River. If we do allow a little bit of tidal change, it's going to allow a little bit of sedimenting, but it's not going to change the fact that we have these great big flows from the Avon River coming down in the spring and that are regularly maintaining a channel 100 meters wide or so. So that's not going to change. So that capacity to flush out that sediment and maintain that shape will not change. So a little bit of tidal change is not expected to change the system as it is. It's a natural equilibrium.
You're willing to put your $1 on that?
Engineering standpoint.
John, Kevin, yes?
Just to add to that, the intent though of the option is not to allow the saltwater intrusion, because as we've said, this is about modeling best information available, and we're not ready to flick a switch to say that we're going to entertain tidal exchange without having a well-engaged community as part of that decision. So we want the flexibility and functionality in the system that gives us the opportunities for community flood protection, allow options. It's not something that's been bolted together. This is a concrete structure. It's there for the lifetime of this highway. This highway, I think the bridges are designed for 75-year life, and the highway itself for 100-year. We're trying to look out for this community to say, we have an option or solution for you for the next 75 to 100 years, so that you, your grandchildren, whoever it is, can make plans on what's happening in your watershed. And if I was a farmer in this area, that's one of the main considerations that I would be thinking about. We're operating a ski hill or boat club, whatever the issue is or the opportunity is. Those are the things that we're trying to include in this design.
Perfect.
Rosamund McDuff, Windsor. Just a question. I was looking at the original, when the original causeway was being built, and studies that were done, and the reason that there wasn't a fishway, or reasons there was not a fishway put in. One of the things that I read was that it had been deemed that the river itself was not really a great place for fish anymore because of the dams and stuff that had already been built up above. If that's the case, at that time, what has happened since then to improve it so that if the fish are going up in there, they're actually going to have a viable place to spawn? I'm assuming it's all for spawning purposes.
Thank you for your question. The original construction, at that time, the only species that DFO was looking at was salmon. There was not deemed to be good salmon habitat upstream, and the dams didn't have fish passage. Therefore, it was estimated at that time, plus with the declining salmon population, it was estimated at that time that there was no effective salmon habitat upstream. That was the reason why it was not deemed that fish passage was important for that structure. Now we're looking at all fish species, and the New Fisheries Act will be quite different, which is to be signed any day now. That will include all fish species. Right now, it's written as just a commercial, recreational, aboriginal importance, but now it's for all fish species.
So you say that has to be monitored once, if we were to go with that hybrid or whatever system, that would be monitored to determine if proper fish passage was happening. If it is determined that there is not a sufficient improvement, is the assumption just going to be made at that point in time that it's because we're not allowing enough salt water to come through, or will there be some kind of studies done to determine whether it's just the fish are not interested in coming back? The same as the Fundy National Parks have determined that the salmon that they've been trying to get to go in the rivers. I was reading an article recently and it said that the problem wasn't that the salmon they were seeding the fish, the rivers with salmon, but the way they were doing it was not allowing the fish were going back out to sea, were not surviving being out to sea, and so therefore they weren't coming back. They determined that there are different ways of seeding, different times that they had the baby fish put in, could alleviate that situation and increase the fish population. But my concern is then that there's going to be they're going to be trying to determine exactly what the reason is. So are the fish just not coming back because the fish aren't coming back into the river, or are they not coming back into the river because of the causeway or the abattoir, and how are they going to make that determination? And so do we run the risk in 3 years' time, the same as the system you spoke about at the last presentation, where it wasn't working properly and you had to open up a bigger opening to allow. So might we be facing that in 3 years' time and all this be for naught?
So currently we have evidence of fish passage on current. Currently we have evidence of fish passage on the current structure itself, but we can only operate that on a limited window of opportunity. Moving that to the outsides on these smaller culvert type corridors that are open right to the sky itself, with providing the light and etc. We're confident that improved fish passage will be achievable, and that the complications of trying to provide flood risk control during those times will not be significant like we have today when you're trying to operate those gates. So it's not like we're creating something new. We're taking what we have and we're duplicating that in this here design and allowing that to happen. We're also putting on fish ladders and other opportunities to create that passage. But yes, we'll still have to continue to monitor, and if a new species shows up, there's always the ongoing requirement to meet DFO's regulations and such. But that's something that we do, and I've worked with them a number of years, and they're reasonable people as well. It's opportunities. I don't visualize that we're going to study this and say, well, it's not working. It has a great potential. It's proven now, and we have significant fish that are moving through the structure. Alex, you might want to talk more about the fish that are showing up, but we're not fish biologists.
I think it's important to realize that our obligation is to improve fish passage, not to improve fish presence. So we cannot guarantee fish presence. So if you are looking for an absolute presence of more fish, that's not what we're legally obligated to do here. So if fish are present and they want to use the passage we've improved, they'll be there. But if they don't want to use the passage, or if they're not present, they won't be there. Some people think they will. So I think it's important to draw that. We are not guaranteeing you, as I said earlier, the Sea of Galilee here. What we're trying to do is allow an opportunity that if fish want to use that river, they will have a greater opportunity to use it. Whether they do or not, or that even exist, is another story that we're not really equipped here to talk about. You'd have to bring in other people for that.
Anybody else in the audience?
Just a quick one. My name is Reed McDuff. I'm from Windsor. Kevin, you showed a picture. You said you didn't want to be in Larvis, but you showed a picture of the town, the roof of the canoe club sticking up to the water. I'm not sure why you show that. Is that any different than the way it's been for the last 50 years? I mean, we've had the same gates, and if the tide and the generator, et cetera, and the heavy rainfall weren't just happen to not coincide, isn't that a scenario that we've been living with ever since the causeway was built?
So I would quantify it to say that that's what the Department of Agriculture has been living with for the past 50 years. And since I came on a little over 5 years ago, I was not comfortable with the current requirements for flood control for that structure. So under the Canadian Dam Association guidelines, if you're operating a flood control structure, there's certain requirements that you have to meet, and it really spells out requirements and the safety obligations of an engineer. So the fact that if our building was swept away in a storm surge because it's underneath the elevations that the current dike itself, why we put the building out in front of the causeway and put it lower than the causeway or dike itself, I can't really speak to that. But seeing that we've had water on the floor of that building before and all the controls to operate that structure are inside it, it's a likelihood that a good hurricane can wipe that structure out. And our backup plan was to get a hold of the crane to be able to open the gates. And that might work for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. But now we have an outlet there that I can plug the generator in and we can operate it with a switch. So I've added, and I shouldn't say we, our team, have added everything possible that we can think of to mitigate the risks of flood control for the structure, but it still keeps me up at night. So when we have a good snow melt on a warm day and a rainfall in the spring of the year, I'm concerned about the flooding of the community of Windsor. And I'm concerned about a gate malfunction. We've had one in the past, and people are calling me and they're saying, what happened? What's going on here? So I'm not trying to show fear tactics with it. We've been very successful that we haven't caused a negative impact to this community. Do I want to hitch my hat to this for the next 20 years? No. Are we going to have an opportunity again when a highway is getting twinned out in front of us and has the ability to leverage infrastructure dollars at the same time? We won't get this chance again. Agriculture will have to go out on its own and try to make the case and make this happen. But, and it's, I hear a lot of feedback from the community, and I respect that. It was perceived the other night at the CLC that I was putting threats out that we're going to walk away from your community flood protection. No, we're not going to do that. And I'm trying to be clear that transportation is a big brother as far as the department goes. We're pretty small potatoes as the Department of Agriculture. To have them at the table and have them listening and being part of this Abato, that's a phenomenal accomplishment here for the Department of Agriculture and a real opportunity for the community of Windsor. And that's the part that I started over 5 years ago, is saying, look guys, when you're going to twin this highway, can we talk about the Abato, and here's our concerns of flood mitigation, and can we, everyone's talking climate change, the funding and the programs, all the stars have lined up on this project that I think it's a real win-win for the community. And I apologize that it hasn't come out as good as it could have, and perhaps has fallen off the rails when some of you are getting the phone calls and etc. I'm getting phone calls as well. There's a real opportunity here to do a balanced solution for everyone and get something that's long-term, and when we'll look back on this hopefully and say this was a great opportunity.
So I just want to back Kevin up on that, because we did start today by suggesting there are really two opportunities. The option D, and just flying over, Peter, my buddy here, transportation would fly over with bridges and leave your current structure in place. I've heard a lot over the years. I was Deputy Minister of Agriculture for 6 years working with Kevin, and I've been 6 years of transportation. I've heard a lot of experts, and I'm not maligning them, say that they know all about that existing Abato and it's good for another 50 years. And this is all bunk and we don't need to do anything about it. And it can be painted and some grease applied to the gears and all that. So I've heard all that. And I'm not saying those people are wrong, but if you don't want, if you want us to fly over with bridges and you want to place your bet on the existing one, you can, you tell us that. We will, I'm not bluffing. I mean, we will do that, because we've heard from the politicians that they don't want you, the councils, to be disturbed on this and to lose any sleep. Okay? So if you want to fly over, we'll do a flyover. Don't want to do it. My 12 years in these both posts, I think that's the wrong thing for you. I think we have an opportunity now, as Kevin says. I'm also Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, so I do the applications to the federal government, and we have applied for cost-shared funding. Don't forget it. It's a federal program. It's a merit-based program. It's a national program. We may not get it. We may not get it the first time. We may get it the second time. I don't know. But there was a wonderful opportunity to get something new here. On the other hand, if you want to keep the current one, we're good. Peter will fix that. He'll design his highway, and we'll fly over. Okay? So that's why I want to get back to Kevin is not ramming this down you. We're not ramming a new Abato down your throats. We're giving you one of two options. And I've been told by all the politicians that if you don't want a new Abato, you don't have to have one.
Just to remind you, our citizens' voices filter through us to you. Peter.
I just want to talk to Paul. Go ahead.
You guys talk. There's a question, yep.
Karen Lynch?
I wanted to mention that the federal minister is coming tomorrow.
Yep.
He's gonna look at the highway twinning. He's not specifically looking at the Abateau, but I was gonna take the opportunity to do the pitch. And that's the Minister of Infrastructure, so he's the guy with the checkbook.
Hi, I'm Karen Lynch. I live in Falmouth, and I am instrumental with the development of the Canoe Club for many years. And I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for listening and making such a great attempt to try and satisfy all of us. I really am much more encouraged than I was last week, and I really appreciate it. But I want to go back to what Darren said about our First Nations neighbors. And I would like to know that they are also being consulted and that they also will feel encouraged by what this new hybrid possibility is. Because I think it's very important that we are in great relationship with them, and they have a lot of wisdom. And I think we need to pay attention to that. Thank you.
So we have a duty to consult, and I know that some things have been said on behalf of the First Nations and what they think. We haven't arrived at that yet. I think 2 nights ago we met with, yesterday we met with Sipanakadee. Sorry about that. And yesterday Peter and I met with Chief Peters of Glooscap. So what we've heard is they're looking forward to us satisfying our duty to consult. Chief Peters did not have a conclusion at the meeting. He did not have any opinion. He says there's a process to go through, and you should go through it. So anything you hear about the process already have generated an opinion is a surprise to me. So we will go through that process, which is Supreme Court mandated, and we will find out what they have to say. And when that happens, we will have a result, which will be brought back to us and you.
Good.
My name is Leah McDonald. I'm a registered nurse here in Windsor, and my daughter and my son actually paddle at Pizziquid Canoe Club. So my question is around the first scenario, which was A, which I know was not on the table any longer. But in that scenario, you had said that a small fishway will still drain the lake. So I'm wondering, is the terminology, am I understanding it correctly when you call it a fishway versus a ladder? Because in the hybrid, when you're talking about a ladder, my understanding would be that it would still drain the lake.
Thank you for your question. Let me just clarify this for you. When I was mentioning draining the lake, that was really option B. Option B, where we pump water into the fishway. Option A really has a fishway that's there and only functions when from the point at which the lake is at the target level. Any additional water goes in the fishway. So it's not a fishway or I guess that option A does not have the ability to drain the lake.
Good, Leah. Any other questions from anybody?
I got one.
Oh, Deputy Warden Morton.
Just a quick question to Paul, the voice. Will the current Pizziquid Lake Level Committee continue to be engaged by the agriculture in the management of the new structure?
Yes, it will, and I'm suggesting that we're going to have to transition that to a more governance structure to include monitoring of fish passage and the structure and being more in tune with what's going on. Right now, we just talk lake levels and what general maintenance requirements would be. I think we have to have a more fuller understanding of what's involved here, the community flood protection and all the aspects with that. So more of a heightened role is what I visualize in the future with the structure. And just to quickly touch on, and jump at Paul here, but the flyover option, as I mentioned, the current building, it could be taken out with the storm, and it's not hard to visualize that you need to upgrade the dike around that structure and the gates, and you'll have to put a fish passage on it at some point. So estimates of $25 million to do that, plus widen longer bridges that would be out in front of that structure. To me, it makes more sense for public good to take that money and invest it into a structure that we can all buy into.
Yeah, no one should assume the flyover is a cheaper option. It's not, because of all the maintenance we have to do in the structure. If that's it, Warden, I'd like to mention because I don't want the press to go ahead and say you drove me to tears, that I had an eye operation and I have got to take drops every 2 hours, but 4 of them. So that's the reason for the tearing every once in a while. It's not that beat me up, okay?
I thought you were just happy to see us, but I got one more question here from Mr. Porter here.
So I hear there's only an option D to apply over that. Did I hear one of them guys say that 5 minutes ago? There's only 2 options left. Is there still C and D on the table? Or is there just D on the table now?
Yeah. Unless you tell us tonight that you like option C, it's not going to be on the table. Because it doesn't allow the flexibility to do whatever we want in the future, whereas option D does. Option D allows us to go any which way according to the political winds and the, the regime of the day. Whereas option C, we're pretty well stuck in one zone.
If I may say, I'd like to have that recorded into the minutes of this meeting, what he just said. It's extremely important. I sat in a room with other people in this room, and first agents asked the questions, and it wasn't just my opinion. I have it right here in writing. They asked, are you going to put our rights below everybody else's wishes? I was in that room. Paul, Pat, you were in that room too. I believe CBCL was in that room too. And in all honesty, I would like what he has on there, what he just said. Because it's just me, I sit in too many rooms and I heard too much. And it really, I find that bothersome.
It's all public record there, so, yeah. So any other questions? Seeing there are none, just to give you clear direction, does everybody like option D that's in the room tonight?
Their hands up.
Thanks, fellas. If you wish to stay, feel free. If not, we'll continue on with our business.
She thinks I moved to Windsor.
I might be divorced next week. I don't know. We'll see. Oh, you want to take a break? Is council going to take a 5-minute break? Yeah, 5 minutes. Need more? 7. Pretty though.